Okay.
Ready? Okay, we're going to call the meeting in order and start with pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Randy or Ray, do you have any comments?
I don't think we got anything to add. I don't.
Discussion of animal shelter proposal. She's not going to be here today, so and that's, again, we discussed that at the last meeting. That's because I had my dates screwed up, so she won't be prepared until the next meeting.
So we're removing that? Mm-hmm. Okay, is that a motion to
Yeah.
accept with that deletion?
Yep.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second, and vote by roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Agenda is approved with the deletion of the animal shelter discussion.
Should be next meeting.
Yeah, we'll put it on to March.
Yep.
First meeting in March. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is Region 11 local official agreement with Southwest Workforce. Okay. Introduce yourself. And
Sure. Sarah Wurstel, Executive Director, Grow Southwest Indiana Workforce Board. We are the nonprofit agency that receives federal funding to provide services in Region 11, so 9 counties, through Work One Southwest offices. And we come before the commission every 2 years to have the agreement renewed. The commission elects either one of the commissioners or the mayor to be the representative on an executive council, which oversees not only activities related to the finances, but also to serve as any advocacy for workforce development within the 9 counties.
we reviewed the,
Yeah.
okay. Randy, did you?
Yes. Who was our representative last year? I know it used to be Mayor Ewing always,
Right, not the
and Mayor
Congress.
Adams. So.
Did we appoint that already in the early appointments or not? I didn't
Tom,
read-
you've been the,
You last
you were
year
the
was
last
you.
official up
Right, the last.
to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was Ewing, I think. Prior to that, I think it was Ewing, and then it was you. and-
Right.
So,
So do we have to approve the agreement and then, right?
Yeah.
yep.
And nominate either a commissioner or the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with approving it and nominating Kale if you'll accept it. It's all right with
I'm
you.
fine with that.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir. That's my motion then.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion made and second, and vote by roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
And also vote aye. Motion made, the agreement, and if Chris Kale will accept it, will be the representative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Do you need this signed before you leave?
Yes.
Okay, this will have to go to the Board of Public Works.
We'll send the
He's the one that signs
completed,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, will you send me a completed copy?
we will.
Okay. Do you want to send me? Yeah, then if you'll send me a completed copy.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Next thing on the agenda is Pam Goffman.
Okay, first off, as I have is payroll that was distributed yesterday on February 14th for all county employees was a 164, 552.40, and comp time for the health department yesterday was 14,605.26.
Motion to approve?
Second that motion?
Motion made and second, vote by roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Also vote aye.
Can I ask an FYI question? Just, I know we already approved it, but just FYI, health department wise, are we doing okay on overtime stuff in there, or where's the grant, I guess, at this point?
At the grant,
Consumer?
I have not heard from yet, as far as what they mentioned at the last council meeting. I have not heard anything on it.
Okay.
And this pretty well ate up the 10,000 that the council, because we had 7 left.
Right,
They appropriated an intent for 10
yep.
at their last meeting, which is going to them here in February. So that gave me 17, a little over 17, and this is 14.
But this basically is.
That
for
just
my-
gets us through right now.
That consumes it. That's
Yeah.
what I thought. That's why I wanted to ask, because.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do here for the payment in March.
Okay.
Next off is I have a payroll benefits claim for the insurance that was paid out weekly of $11,585.49 for claims.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion made and second, vote by roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Also vote aye.
Okay, next is I have minutes from January the 4th and January the 18th with changes that were already submitted. And they've already been done.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second?
Motion made and second, vote by roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Also vote aye.
Okay, the last thing I have is the personnel policy changes. The last time that we brought this up and for discussion was back on December 29th at your meeting. I have finally gotten Wagner, Erlen, and Shealy to write up what it will look like going into the personnel policy as far as personnel appearance. What's highlighted in yellow with the T-shirts with inappropriate slogans, muscle shirts, crop tops, and provocative or revealing clothing should be avoided. Examples of inappropriate pants include shorts, extremely holey jeans, and pants worn below the waist or the hip lines for the personal appearance. Personal leave, we've added in the extra 8 hours or 7 hours for the June 19th holiday that we talked about. And the last one is the personal leave for the new hires, that we were looking to give them half of their personal time after 6 months of employment instead of waiting for the first year.
Discussion.
I just got one suggestion on 4.3.1. It says, will accrue personal time as defined above. So if there's no confusion, can we reference 4.3? So say above in 4.3, because that's what it's trying to say, and it would be more direct.
Okay, so put above in 4.3,
Yeah, and other than that, I'm good with it.
okay,
That way there's no confusion what above means.
okay.
Motion with that change?
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion made and second, vote by roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Also vote aye.
Okay, thank you, and it will be taken to the council here with their, we're in February meeting to get approved, and once it's approved by them, then it will go in the book. That's all I've got.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the consideration of property tax assessment board of appeals ordinance. We tabled that for the last one. So I'll open that up for discussion. Commissioners?
I think when we tabled it, I had a motion, I didn't get a second on taking it to 3. I think we've got a little information since then on the 3 versus 5. Mindy, could you explain that, the text you just sent me this morning? I think you reached out to several counties, actually 67 counties, the way it looks. 44 of those,
Have 3 members.
3 members.
Mm-hmm.
And 23 has 5.
Correct.
Of the 67, you probably don't know this, are they about the counties our size of the 44 that did?
Most of them are the smaller counties.
Okay.
Majority of the 5 members are like the Allen counties, Marion, Hamilton, the larger
Yes.
counties.
Of course, they'd have more
Mhm.
issues, yeah.
Yep.
So
I would still like to stay with my motion of 3, because I thought quite a bit about it last time, and I really haven't changed my mind any on the 3 versus the 5. And that kind of sees that for a fact in the state, we'd be more in line with the counties our size, so.
Reason behind mine was to make sure we had interest, and we've got some odd people signed up, so I won't second. And that, if you look at the 44 counties, I bet if you ask them the reason, it's because they don't have interest.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I bet if you look at the 44 counties and you actually asked them what was the reason for it, it was because they didn't have interest. We do, so.
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
That wasn't on the survey,
I
so.
understand.
Can I say something? I have a statement I'd like to make about this.
Come up here.
I will. Thank you for allowing me to do this. I wrote this down so that I didn't forget anything. I would like to take a moment to consider what has happened and taken place with the PETA-BOA, Property Tax Assessment Board of Appeals. This board was put together and put in place by the state of Indiana to provide an unbiased checks and balances review of taxpayer appeals for their property taxes. In order to ensure this happens, the state regulated how the PETA-BOA is assembled and functions through statutory requirements. Among these statutes is the requirement that you, the commissioners, and the county council shall appoint members annually. This has not been done for many years. Next, an employee of the assessor's office shall not serve on this PETA-BOA appeals board. A current employee of the assessor's office has been a voting member on this board for many years. How can the PETA-BOA be unbiased when an employee of the assessor's office is a voting member? This employee will not go against her boss. It's likely. Lastly, the PETA-BOA shall be comprised of 3 or 5 members. Yet again, this requirement has not been met for many years. They've had 4. In fact, the assessor and county attorney both themselves acknowledged this in the last commissioner meeting, that they have not been in compliance. My personal hearing with the PETA-BOA this year, I was the first one of 2 days, began with the presentation of these very statutory requirements. The assessor and the PETA-BOA board were then put on notice that they were not in compliance, and these hearings continued for the next 2 days regardless. This is negligence. The actions of the assessor and other elected officials, yourselves included, have exposed the county to potential of legal liabilities. We, the citizens, deserve better than this. The way to resolve this issue is to remove ineligible members from the PETA-BOA board and to move to a 5-member board that is appointed annually, as it should be. You may say someone like me has no knowledge in tax assessment or this process. I completely disagree. In fact, I feel I am quite competent and knowledgeable in this subject. I'm competent enough to know, to do a simple search on the internet to see that we are blatantly operating this PETA-BOA board in a manner that is the exact opposite of how the state of Indiana intended it to be. This is a disgrace, and you owe it to the taxpayers of Perry County to get it fixed moving forward. And I'm in favor of 5-member board, since there's plenty.
More comment?
No, said mine.
So, we've got 2 motions on the table.
Yes. I didn't make a motion, I just denied the second. But I'll make a motion to keep a 5-member board.
Well, I have to agree with Greg on that we have interest, and I have to agree with Randy on the size of it. So, this can be changed down to, annually if the commissioners decide to. With the interest in it, I'm going to second Greg's to
Thank you.
put 5, because we do have several qualified people. So,
To a vote?
with that said, then we'll go with a vote. Randy?
No.
Greg?
Aye.
All right, I'll vote 2-1. We'll remain at 5. Now for board appointments.
That leaves us with 3 appointments. Is that correct?
3.
Yeah.
And they can't be no more than 3 of one party. One thing I do not know
It doesn't
is,
mention anything about who votes what.
Right.
It's just a statement that no more of 3 than 3 can be of the same political party.
Well, since, and this is nothing personal, I can make a motion, and since we both had two had motioned on the number, I'd like to make a motion on the people. Of the people that have applied for the, and there have been 7, correct?
Correct.
I would like to nominate Missy Noble, who has 30 years in banking and is a Republican. Kim Bryant, Esri Bryant, who has got 20-plus years as a real estate broker. And Courtney Caseboat, who is also has many years of experience as a as real estate and as a builder, and she's also a Republican. So that's 3 Republicans with extensive experience and knowledge of property values. So that's my motion.
You doing them as a group?
Yes.
I'm gonna make a second motion with Kelly, Kim, and Lee.
I'll go with Tom's motion, Kim, Missy, and Courtney.
Okay.
Can I go
Motion-
back here? What was Greg's 3 names?
Kelly, Kim, and Lee.
And then that will leave the council to appoint one more, right?
Kim.
Or is the original appointment count? I mean, I don't know.
The council at this point has only appointed Tony
Hollenden.
Hollenden, right?
Right.
Or do they have 2?
They have, the council will appoint 2.
Okay, but they only have Tony now.
Well, Tony was just a replacement until the first of the year.
You're right,
according
but
to
that's who
the-
they appointed at their last, or
In December.
in December for the 21.
For 21. For
Yes.
22, they still need to make 2 appointments.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Randy, what was your motion?
My motion was to go with Tom. That would be Kim Bryant, Missy Noble, and Courtney Caseboat.
Okay, motion made and second. Roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Great.
No.
And I vote aye. So 2-1.
So we have 2 Democrats.
Yes. And I do want to thank everybody else that has expressed interest, because we have never had interest in this board before, and we do have now, so. Okay, next board appointment.
PSAP? PSAP?
PSAP is next. Okay, the PSAP, we've had several applications. The PSAP board, it's a 2-year term, and it's an advisory committee. It's, they're just advisory mode and advisory capacity. To be on the committee, the qualifications are that they shall be active or retired public service employees of a public service agency located in Perry County that is routinely receives calls from the dispatch center. So it would be somebody that gets dispatched out, and they just bring their side of the of dispatch to the advisory committee. The personnel issues with the dispatch will remain in Tell City. I mean, so this is not personnel issues, and it doesn't affect pay or anything to do with the dispatchers. That is still under the authority of Tell City and the chief and the assistant chief. So,
Yes, the question I would have, we got several dispatchers on here, so they really wouldn't qualify, would they? Like the statement you read,
unless they also are,
emergency management somewhere else?
or dispatch, well, it could be police or,
EMA or rescue?
or a fire department.
Or law enforcement?
Yeah, one that I would like to discuss, Lee Hall has already been appointed by Cannleton, so. But you're right, Randy.
Okay, I'll make a motion, I'll look through the resumes and everything, but I'll make a motion for David Falkenberg and Aaron Myers,
Okay,
serve on the board.
Shannon Lemcooler and Chris
Okay.
Axton would be my nominations.
okay.
And I know Shannon Lemcooler you had marked as dispatcher, but she also was EMA, and David Falkenberg is retired, and so she's retired from emergency services, so she actually has been dispatched before, so she qualifies.
Okay.
Who was the second one?
Shannon Lamcooler and Chris Axton. Well, after reviewing it myself, I'm gonna second Randy's motion, because of the aspect that Dave Falkenberg can bring. He has been involved in the community, he's former chief, and he is still active as a diver on EMA, and he's involved in law enforcement and dispatch. And then Aaron Meyer has been the EMA Rescue and Anderson Fire, so he represents first responder coordinator and Anderson Fire. So that's why I second Randy's motion. So we'll vote by roll call. Greg?
I think Roger's wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Roger. Would you care to step up?
Yes, sir, thank you.
I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Tom, thank you, Randy. By no means am I here to critique your choices, okay? That's not my intention here. I think when we wrote this interlocal agreement, we all had one thing in mind, and we were all pretty much at the same meetings. No one person can take responsibility for writing this interlocal agreement that was signed by every individual. We had one goal in mind. That goal was to add and make clarity to the people that's going to take these seats and be in our positions later, where it would be clear, okay? State statutes sometimes are written in a different form where lawyers and police officers are able to tweak and twist and turn these and mince words to make it fit the bill, okay? Policies and procedures and interlocal agreements as this, I think, is pretty cut and dry. We were very firm in stating that retirees were not eligible, okay? So if, we made that very clear. Our dispatch,
Go back 1 minute, retiree was not eligible?
they are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That changed that night we voted on it.
Yes, sir,
Yes,
it did.
okay.
Yes, sir, it sure did. Somebody made that recommendation, and it
So I
did.
thought you said the opposite, that's why.
And I may have.
Yeah, I thought you
But the point I'm trying to make here is the clarity of this, and not to mince words. Advisory committee should be made up of 7 members, 2 appointed by county commissioners, and again, that's your choice. The mayor made his choice. I myself was one. Dispatcher Micah Jackson, who you say would not be eligible, was his second. I would not have been upset, offended, or been disappointed in any way had my place been taken by a second dispatcher. And the reason I say that is because we talk about in here shall be appointed, and in the appointment committee of public service employees located inside of Perry County, Indiana, that fits us, that routinely receives calls from the dispatch center and shall not be an elected official. Getting back to that routinely receives calls from the dispatch center, our dispatchers don't routinely receive calls. They receive every call. Our dispatch folks and personnel are not the center. The center is the infrastructure. Anybody can dispatch anybody to a call. Anytime 911 rings, a person that picks up the phone has now been dispatched to that call and passed that information on.
They're part of the chain.
Part of the chain. We've all talked about this in several meetings about components of dispatch. These folks are components of dispatch. They are not the center, okay? Text 911, we have that capability. Great thing. That's another way they can be dispatched to a call. Every time the radio breaks from a different Psap, asking these folks to be dispatched to a call, they relay information. They are first to be dispatched to the call to relay the information. So to say to the layperson And if that's who you want to choose, that's fine, okay? Not knocking David's knowledge and his profession. He's been great, and he has a lot of knowledge. But to see how the technology has changed inside that center, I have not seen David in our dispatch center. Aaron Meyer, if you want to mince words, as an employee, great volunteer, provides great service to the county. Not knocking Aaron. Again, I have not seen him inside of our dispatch center. And I know we both have goals here as far as what we want to see, and it's the best interest of our dispatch. That is the reason we made the choice to choose a dispatcher, and I wouldn't be offended again if we chose 2 dispatchers on our side for our choice, because they have the knowledge and they have the day-to-day operations down to pat. They're not compared to anyone that don't have direct involvement in the daily operations. If we were going to allow lay people to be into this, we should have included the citizens and let them have a say in it. We were very clear in saying that elected officials, but now we're twisting it around when we say that they're not dispatched to calls, because these folks are definitely dispatched to calls. They are definitely dispatched to calls. They may not be active in the field, some may not, as a volunteer service, not as employees for another entity or another agency. But then you got to look at the term employees. What is an employee? Is an employee a volunteer? I don't know, okay? But to twist it and try to, get a different interpretation of how it's written, it's written to be precise and clear. And these folks, by all means, by many forms, are dispatched to calls. That's all I have to say. I stand by our dispatcher being one of the members. I don't think that we would stand by eliminating him. And if I was to be replaced by a dispatcher, so be it. I think they are more qualified than I am. I lean for them for guidance all the time. I'm not in that center every day. I know that I oversee scheduling and daily operations, sometimes personnel issues. I understand that I am the administrator there over dispatch, but I lean on these folks a lot of times, more times than not, for guidance and clarity on certain things. So to say that they're not dispatched to calls is not correct, and I respectfully disagree.
Well, with that,
I do not disagree with you, by the way, and I think I've had that conversation with a few of you, and you would have been my first choice if Mary hadn't snagged you. Shannon was my first choice for the same reason, because she's been in that position for 13 some odd years. She's done this. She's also been on EMA before too, helping with emergency rescue. Chris Axton, the reason I suggested him was because he's well-rounded. I think that's what you need on this board, is well-rounded. He's been in EMA, he's been a reserve, he's been in your dispatch before, I know he has.
Yes, he has.
So those are the reasons why I picked those 2 people, is because I think you need that well-roundedness there. It can't be all dispatchers, and I think we all agree with that, but I think you do need to have the dispatchers in there. What you're looking for is, what's that chain of that call, right?
Absolutely.
I use that word very frequently, that chain of that call. Dispatchers are the first link of that chain, and sometimes the last link of that chain. Right?
Exactly.
Because they close the CAD. Well, I shouldn't say sometimes, they always are. They're the one that closes the CAD.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with the dispatcher being on there.
It first came into, the discussion first came up when the Psap, determined the Psap, which we all came to an agreement on, and everybody attended the meetings. And I think it's going to work beautifully if it's structured right, and I think the people that come in behind you and me and Derek and some of the other ones, some of the dispatchers, I think we provided more clarity as to what we're looking for. And I agree with every commissioner in here when they said our first interlocal agreement was lacking. And, that was...
fixed that.
Yeah, we did. But now to twist and try to say that our dispatchers aren't eligible and not dispatched to calls, they don't routinely. I take law enforcement calls. I'm an EMT, so I try to respond to medical as well. But you understand, I take some calls. Deputies take law enforcement calls. These folks take every call. So they're not routinely dispatched to calls. They're dispatched to every call. And that, again, I'm not critiquing your choices. I just don't want to knock our choice out as far as being ineligible, sir. And I hope you guys respect and understand that I just don't want, just because of the way that we're trying to mince words here, that they're not eligible. I just,
Well, with that said, and in respect for that, and Mike, if you don't care, I'm gonna use you as an example. You are part of EMA also. Right, so we all wear different hats in this community. But this is an advisory committee, and we need to get all aspects of people being dispatched. So, hey, Mike being on there, I have no problem with that at all.
okay,
Nathan, would love to have you, there's only 2 spots. And Renee, I don't have I want to make it clear, I don't have a problem with the ones that we didn't choose. I just feel that bringing the aspects that the other 2 bring, that the 2 that Randy made the motion for, is important too,
oh, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
it's.
And again, I'm not, again, gentlemen, please, with all due
Now,
respect.
You made the comment that they're not in the dispatch center. Well, maybe we need to fix that too. We're fixing things along the way.
We can, but I
Right.
don't want to be on record saying that a dispatcher is ineligible. If I walk out here today and fall dead, who's going to replace me? Maybe it's the dispatcher. But how can they if they're not eligible? And I don't want that to be on record. If dispatchers wasn't eligible, it should have been clearly stated in this interlocal agreement before any signature was put on here. We knew where we were leaning towards. We knew where our choices were going. And I think that it should have just as been stated just as clearly as an elected official was not eligible. So, I'm thinking about the future here. If I hold the position for 2 years, 2 years comes up, Mike and I are replaced, I don't want to be on record saying that dispatchers, and I don't want this changed. I mean, we worked hard on this. When I
Right.
say we, this was not one person, everybody. Greg started this when he constructed a basic model for us to build from, and we all built from it.
And that was just Monroe counties. But anyway.
But it had to start somewhere.
Right.
We had to have a base model because we never gone that far.
Right, but what I'm going to make it clear, that I have no problem with the dispatchers either, and Micah will represent dispatch well.
Yes, sir.
I believe that he will.
I understand that.
Right.
But to say the ineligibility part is where I'm hung up, because let's talk about employees. EMAs is not employees, they're volunteer. And we're grateful for them. We're grateful for them.
Yes.
Right.
Not knocking them, but they're not employees. They don't meet the criteria of an employee. But do we want to nitpick that far? No, we don't. We want it
On the
well-rounded.
flip side of that, they represent aspects of emergency services that are dispatched.
And so do these folks.
Exactly, so.
So, but can we just strike the ineligibility of dispatchers? And I'm not saying you have to choose a dispatcher. I'm not trying to influence your decision.
I don't know that we,
There never was a vote where they were or not, and if there was, I think, if we want to do something like that, I'm all for it, but I don't know how you would, in other words, probably the only thing we can do right now is a resolution. And I'm fine with
I
making.
don't know that we need to go through that.
I'm just saying, if it's a
You
sticking
know, that
point,
it's understood
no
that
problem
there's,
with it.
that they're.
Public safety. They
And
meet the
you make a- you
criteria.
make a good
That's
point.
that's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to change your alls. If you all choose Aaron and David, I love both of those guys to death. They've been great to the county. I have nothing against either one of them. I'm not trying to influence your change in your decision-making. I'm not trying to influence you to choose a dispatcher. I just don't like the ineligibility part of a dispatcher.
Roger, before your time, when I was commissioner, first few years, we had some issues with dispatch.
Yes, sir.
And it'd been great to have this advisory committee at that time.
I couldn't agree more.
There's 2 different occasions that we met at the hospital with doing EMS issues. We had to meet with the CEO of the hospital, the EMS director, chief of police, and the head of, John Allen, I think, was a dispatch, just like what you are. It'd been great to have this board to bounce this off of that.
Sure.
We worked it out, but that was 2 situations I've seen that I went through that I think it's better to have some people, like, I don't have a problem with a dispatcher on here. I just want to make sure if we do have to change something on there to make a dispatcher on there, that's fine. But I think we need to have that outside where the calls is coming from your dispatch out to our volunteers or whoever it is that knows those sides of it. So you got the dispatcher that knows the inside, you got the guys on the outside, or gals on the outside knows that side of it.
Absolutely.
That's receiving those 911 calls going out there, because they're the ones doing the work.
I understand.
Doing the
And as far as the
They can't do
exclusion.
that work until that dispatcher tells them that.
Right.
So it's all gotta work together.
Yes, sir.
And that's where I think two outside faces is perfect for this. That's my opinion.
And I'm not knocking that, sir. Again, please understand, I'm not trying to influence your decision on your choices. You guys got two choices just like we did. And I have nothing bad to say about your two choices. I'm not trying to get you to pick a dispatcher. I just didn't like and understand the fact of our dispatchers being ineligible. It does not say anywhere where they're ineligible. If Mr. Cleaving, if you called 911 from wherever and you had an emergency, you are dispatching these folks to the scene of the emergency. They may not be in the field with you, and I understand. And what you're saying, I see that as well-rounded, involving many
Right,
faces.
but the exclusion or the non-exclusion of a dispatcher is up to the interpretation of the agreement with the appointing party. So the city of Tell City, if they say, no, they're not excluded, then that's their interpretation of the agreement, and it has to be honored. And the next Board of Commissioners are the same thing.
Okay.
So, I mean,
So
you
again-
make a good point, don't get me wrong.
So again, sir, there's going to be no revision saying they're ineligible. It's going to remain the same, and in the next 2 years, if our city mayor chooses two dispatchers, well, then that's their choice, and that'll stick.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no plan to change the agreement,
Okay.
or propose a change in the agreement.
Yeah, else we make it
It's up to
clear
the
that a dispatcher
interpretation.
can be on there. I mean, I'd be the, if we think there's a little tweak, if we have to, we can. If not,
I think it's perfect,
okay, we'll do that.
We're good.
but I just didn't
One thing I'll tell you, Rod,
understand the
I know a little
ineligibility.
bit about 911 because I was on the fire department for 35 years. I'm a retired officer of the fire department now. When I started on the fire department, we had what they called the phone tree. And that's where a person didn't call 911 because 911 didn't exist out in the county at that time. They called a person's house, and that person tried to call the fireman. That's before cell phones. They called your home phone. You talking about a slow response. When we got able to get pagers and got 911 set in place, was the best thing ever happened to the rural Perry County. So I seen all that happen. Then I got dispatched. And I always think it's better to have some eyes outside looking in, because there's some ideals out there that maybe you don't see and they don't see from your side. When you join both of them together, like this committee's going to be, it's perfect.
I couldn't agree with you more, sir.
That's why we always need to keep people on the outside looking in versus inside looking out also.
I couldn't agree with you.
That's how you formed this agreement.
I couldn't agree with you more, sir.
So that's my thought on
The
that.
only thing that caught my attention was the ineligibility of dispatchers.
And
And
that's interpretation of the agreement.
your interpretation, or Mr. Cleaving's, and I'm sorry. But that's your.
No, it's either, whether it's an exclusion or not, is interpretation of whoever.
Okay. Whoever's making the appointment.
Right.
Okay. Sir, thank you for your time.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that it warrants a change. You know what I mean? It warrants
I
a
would-
change in the agreement.
We worked hard on this.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to work out. I do. But the ineligibility caught my attention, and I really
Regardless
appreciate
of
it.
what words you put in that contract, it's always intent. And I understand why you got up here and did what you did, because I agree with the intent that dispatchers are qualified. They are part of this, so. And I think that's the thing. We could change the words in the agreement 6 more times, and somehow or another, the intent may not still shine through, right?
Right.
But as of today, as me as a commissioner, and I can only speak for myself unless we do a vote, dispatchers are qualified to be in this board.
Thank you.
That's all there is.
Right, you believe they do, I mean, and that's your interpretation.
That's my interpretation.
Again, sir, thank you all for your
All right,
time.
thanks, Roger. Thanks for all your work. Yes?
I was going to ask Roger a question. Did you say that one of the requirements in that contract is you have to be an employee?
No.
If it is that one guy employee? I mean, I'm just wondering. You said something about you have to be an employee.
Active or retired
Active or retired.
employees.
Right, which can be volunteer or
Retired
paid.
employee. So it'd be active employee or retired
So
employee.
volunteer counts as an employee?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. They are. Whether they're compensated or not, but they're covered under liability and, yeah.
Good.
I did, one question.
Cindy, could you come up here, please, for the camera outside here? 'Cause Hear you and see you.
Just coming from what Roger was saying, what I'm understanding is it's that interpretation word that we run off of from the get-go, right? It's using that word that, how can something that's written clearly, how can we throw out the word interpretation from different people? It's written out, why is it not clear? I mean, is it not clear?
If it was clear on the elected officials, they couldn't be a part.
Yeah.
The other clarity isn't there.
The problem, Cindy, is this phrasing right here. And I'll read it.
I mean, I'm just curious from what
Yeah,
you're
but
saying.
I think it's worthy of just hearing the way it's phrased here. Let me find it real quick, just so you can see. It's actually over here, sorry. Okay. Appointments to the advisory committee shall be active or retired public safety employees of a public safety agency located in Perry County, Indiana, that routinely receives calls from the dispatch center and shall not be elected officials. It really, if I had to go back and rephrase it, it'd be that routinely handles calls from the dispatch center.
Right, but that's not how it was written.
But we didn't write it that way, and so then you get into this, and it's one of those things that when you write it the first time and you read it, you know the intent, it sounds correct, and then when you go back 6 months later, somebody else can interpret it some other way,
So
right?
the
So
intent was
that's
not-
the problem that you gotta always do. And intent of contract is sometimes more important than the words of the contract, because as time goes on, that intent gets clarified. In discussions like this, which has been a great discussion, and I appreciate it, now it's on record, and it'll be in the minutes, that the intent of this does not exclude dispatchers, based on two of the commissioners, basically. Okay.
I just didn't understand the word interpretation.
Yeah, and it's just that one little word that kind of throws a wrench in the possibility of interpreting it, but I think we all understand the intent at this point, right?
Any documentation is up
Yeah.
to interpretation.
Yeah,
That is-
absolutely.
That's a
Absolutely.
fact.
why do we have laws?
Well, laws are even interpreted, that's why we have a judicial system.
Why we have courts.
If we didn't have to interpret, we wouldn't have a judicial system. That's the problem with laws, so, but, no.
So we got a motion and a second. Roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Greg?
No.
I vote aye, 2-1. David Falkenberg and Aaron Meyer. All right. Next is approval of the transfer request.
Hold on, you still have, you have a couple other.
Oh, a couple of board
Yeah.
appointments, that's right. Go ahead.
Late yesterday afternoon, I got an email from a Dwight Archibald from Oil Township. You have a copy of the email. I don't have any information on him, other than I did reply back to clarify if he was interested in Plan Commission or zoning appeals, and he did reply back and said zoning appeals. You do have a vacant appointment on the zoning appeals.
It's been vacant for several,
It's been
Right.
vacant for quite a long time. The term of that appointment was up at the end of '21. If it were to be filled, it would have been up for reappointment starting this year. It's a 4-year term, and you must be a resident or own property in the jurisdictional area of this, of the board. And looking this person up, I do see that he does live out in the county, so I just don't know anything more about him to share with you, so I don't know, but he did said that he was interested in zoning appeals.
did you talk to him, Greg?
Yes, yeah, I did. He actually lived in Spencer County for quite a while and then came back to Perry County. He's been to several different things, trying to get involved in politics and stuff like that, so he saw this and had an interest, so I said, by all means, sign up if you're interested, so.
Well, not just to fill the warm body, but it's been vacant for so long, so encourage people to get involved.
And that's a board that doesn't meet very often, but when they do meet, it's very important.
Yeah.
Right. It's a first step in varying
Yeah.
to the zoning laws.
Is this
Entertain a
one-
motion.
Which board are we doing first? The
We have no interest for Plan Commission.
Lee Hall. Got his letter right here, you sent it to me.
Was that on the same letter for Psap?
Yep.
Oh, missed that.
Yeah, I thought he was.
He's asking for a plan commission and Board of Zoning Appeals.
Well, let's do, to answer your question, let's do Board of Planning, let's do the
Board of Appeals, Mr.
Board
Warren,
of Appeals first.
Yeah.
So
Let's keep
it'd
them separate.
Okay.
be Lee or Dwight then, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dwight.
I apologize.
Plan.
Yeah, it was on there.
Appeals.
But Lee asked for that one too, so it's one or the other.
Arbor Lane,
Is he qualified for both of them?
I don't know. I have checked the zoning, I have checked with the zoning administrator. Arbor Lane, I don't know if you're in the,
Did we get a response from?
it's Anderson, right? It's Anderson
Yes.
Township if it's Arbor. I would think it's
Yeah,
outside.
he's
Arbor
outside.
Lane
of-
is, Arbor Lane's kind of like in a subdivision area. That's not
He's in
a
Brushy-
county
that's in
road.
Brushy
Okay, I was gonna
Hollow.
say, because it's in a subdivision area, because it's not a county road.
Oh, okay.
But he's saying it's in Brushy Hollow.
Yes,
Okay.
That'd be the county.
yeah, it's outside of the 2 mile.
Okay. Well, then he's interested, yeah, I apologize. He's interested in Plan Commission and zoning appeals,
And we got one position in each.
correct?
Well, I mean, I think it's, my opinion is.
I would need to know a political
Yeah,
affiliation.
one on each.
Dwight is Republican and so is Lee. Lee says it in his letter.
Plan commission.
Dwight, I know. Yes.
So you want to take them separately or together? I mean, I entertain a motion either way.
I just split it down the middle. We know that he's not asking for the commission, Lee is. Let's give Lee the commission and him the zoning appeals. That's
Okay.
my motion, so.
I'll be good with that, so I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, what do we got? I'm sorry.
Motion made to put Osgood,
Archibald,
Archibald.
Dwight Archibald.
Okay,
Because I did
so he's on zoning appeals.
appeals, and Lee Hall on
Plan Commission.
Plan Commission.
Yeah.
And I haven't had time to research Archibald, but I know Lee Hall.
Yeah.
But you
But-
second it, Randy?
Yeah, I think Greg talked to him, so I'll go with what Greg thought was of him, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Hall, I'll need to have sometime your political affiliation, Lee.
You told me.
Lee's not here.
He's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's Roger Smith, not Lee
Oh,
Hall.
God, yeah. I'm looking at you, and I was saying that, I was thinking Lee Hall. Sorry, different officer.
Okay.
So,
All right, motion
Been a long
made,
morning already. Apologize.
motion made and second. And
Okay.
vote roll call, Greg?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Also vote aye. It's a long morning, eh?
It's been a long morning already.
All right.
Okay, so Lee Hall. Yeah, I missed that. Okay. Transfer request?
Yes.
This is a transfer request, and I don't have a copy of it, I think I've given it out. Or maybe it's over here, hold on. This is a transfer request for the hospital's portion of contribution for dispatch. And I know there's been conversation with Brian Herwig at the hospital about wanting that to be passed through the ambulance service subsidy that the county budgets for ambulance service. And the ambulance service was to have 35, I believe it was, yeah, $35,000 was their contribution for the 911 dispatch. And so therefore, I have a transfer request from the ambulance service for that amount in county general under the commissioner's budget to a line item in that same budget for dispatch, 911 dispatch service.
So basically what used to happen from my understanding, is the $35,000 was requested from the hospital to pay for dispatch. And in such way, we actually paid the hospital. So we basically did it was almost like a pass-through. The county paid the hospital paid dispatch, is my understanding how that worked. Okay.
So this proposal, just to make it cleaner, goes straight from the county.
Yeah, you need to transfer, I mean, you would need to transfer to another line item, because ambulance service line item is to fulfill the contract with the hospital for
Okay,
ambulance
but you,
service.
right, but you failed to mention ambulance service to transfer to dispatch service.
That's what it's doing.
Yes, to 911
Okay. Yeah, I didn't
dispatch
know if you
service
mentioned
in the
that.
same budget.
Okay.
Why are we doing it different now, I guess is my question. Is the, I mean, if it worked that way in the past, why can't we continue to do it that way?
I'll be honest with you, we did not know that that's the way it was working.
Okay.
Because all of ours was the lost subsidies that we were paying for.
Okay.
Never was it ever pointed out that any of that was for dispatch.
So in the calculations of the lost subsidies, that line item shown somewhere in there? Or how do we know it is? Well, Teresa's the one that handles it, that's why I'm looking at her.
I think that's why they had the conversation
You've
with
seen, I
Brian.
will say, the budget requests were made public
Yeah.
for the hospital.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing how they calculated their subsidy. I didn't know that was inside there myself, to tell you the truth, so. Is that, so if we do this, basically, we're taking on that additional cost. So I would like to see where in their, before I pass this and prove it, I would like to see where in the hospital in the past, they have actually charged us that $35,000. There's gotta be documentation of that somehow. If we have requested subsidies, they have to have a line item out, and I don't know if we've seen that.
Maybe Roger can answer that, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, we would basically prepare the letter, send it, and I'm not sure exactly how it was resolved on your end, so.
Yeah.
You would send it to the hospital,
Correct.
Yeah.
and then they would pay it.
Yeah.
So
Any
I'm,
kind of contract with the
Yeah.
hospital, Jerry?
We
Or
did not until.
Just a letter?
Until, we always, I kind of inherited the letter that was sent routinely, but we agreed at a city that we needed to do an interlocal agreement with them, just like we do with other entities. So we started doing that year before last, I think. So there is an agreement. It would be expired now, obviously.
I thought this was a blanket agreement for them.
Yeah, the way that we understood with the new interlocal agreement with the county was that it was just going to be one agreement.
Yes, and we went after the other agreements,
Right.
Calton, Troy, and
Correct.
now the hospital.
That the county is contracting with Tell City for dispatch services.
Correct, yes.
All dispatch services in the county,
Yes, sir.
Instead of everybody paying individually, it was just a blanket
right, which includes the other,
between us and the county.
which includes Candleton and,
Yes, sir.
right, yeah. So this just, it also, Candleton's portion is paid to Tell City, paid to the county, and then the county pays
Yeah,
the city, correct, Roger? and
Yes, sir.
Eric?
The way I'm understanding this.
Right.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if the wording, the revenue source that was presented for dispatch states Perry County Ambulance. And I think maybe that's where it came in, that this falls under the ambulance service. Where
Under the
I don't know
subsidy.
what it was before.
I've seen it in the budgets.
okay.
so,
In the hospital budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
Well,
how-
bottom line, the county has to pay it, and since we pay a subsidy over what they earn, we have to pay it. We've been paying before, roundabout way,
Okay.
through the
Right.
subsidies, so.
I guess what I'm asking for to vote on it is documentation that it's been inside the subsidies in the past, before I take it on. Because I'm taking on $35,000 for the county that we may or may not have been paying before, is what I'm saying. Is it something that is dire need, well, I don't know which one of you to look at when it comes to bills or cost or whatever, is it something that you have to have right now? I'm not against you getting your 35 grand, let's be right up front about that. All I'm trying to figure out is where did it come from in the past, and why is it coming this way now?
Letters were initially sent out, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, independently to each agency, Hamilton, Troy, the county,
Yeah.
Perry County Memorial Hospital.
And they all paid individually.
That would be a question more for Connie.
Okay.
Because the billing will all go through her. But yes, it's my understanding that we always looked at Perry County Memorial Hospital as one of the billing entities that we had provided dispatch service for. We kind of looked at it separate from the county.
And I believe the budget that was created by the council has that line item in there for the hospital, is actually in there, from the hospital. So I don't understand why we're changing.
The line item that went to the council is
Strictly for ambulance service,
ambulance service.
Okay.
not
And
any.
part of their budget, which doesn't have to be approved by the council or the county, part of their budget for EMS was $35,000 for dispatch. So in the new agreement, the county just took responsibility for all, which eliminated the need of giving the hospital $35,000 so they could give it to dispatch. Is that
So in
assessment?
the council's budget for the hospital, they had a line item for $35,000?
No.
No.
You had a line on what the
Subsidy.
hospital asked for.
And that's
for
what
total subsidy.
that's what I'm asking. We calculate what we pay them in subsidy, and it's not necessarily a fixed amount. And so I'm wondering, are we taking on extra burden for the county, for the hospital? That's what I'm asking. So if there's no documentation in the past that says that $35,000 was part of the calculation for the subsidy we paid, then how do I know I'm not consuming more debt than what we paid in the past?
Right, so you want,
I just want the
suggest you
documentation.
table it till you get that information.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you gotta realize too, back in middle of, just say for example, around 2014, 15, before we put the ambulance at the North Station, we was not paying a subsidy, the county. It was taking care of itself, but we only had one ambulance and a backup, or second crew, but they wasn't on standby. So we worked very hard, the commissioners and the council at that time, to add that other crew, knowing it was gonna cost. Everybody was in favor for that other crew, but what was a holdup was trying to find funding for a few years. When the public safety tax came in, that helped that funding. So after that, then we've been seeing roughly a $250,000 subsidy going to the hospital from the county at that point, but we knew we was gonna have to do that to get that extra crew to protect the people of Perry County.
And for that additional service, if $250,000 is what we've been annually paying, which is right, then I'm fine with that. I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
I'm asking, are we increasing it to $285 at this point with this move? I just want documentation that says I'm not adding another 35 to that subsidy.
I guess the question I would
Relatively
have.
simple to see. It'll be in the books.
Yeah, it'd be in the county, but yeah.
It is.
I just gotta see it.
Okay,
Okay.
you wanna, yeah, it's there.
Yeah. And as long as it's there and I see it, then
Yeah.
we can change the way it passes through, but I need to see
And
it.
it was there back in when we wasn't paying a subsidy, but
Yeah.
they was making enough money to pay it.
Yeah.
I'm not correct on that.
And I
You
understand,
were paying the
and I
subsidy.
We wasn't
understand.
in
Yeah,
it.
we were.
Okay.
I
No,
know.
that didn't, I mean, I interrupt, but that wasn't correct. We were paying the subsidy
Yeah.
Before
before that.
that,
Yeah.
paying the dispatch service.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't aware of that. so.
But either way, I understand the need for the subsidy, I understand what, the reason
Yeah.
why we're doing it and that.
But you wanna see it-
And in reality, if the hospital failed, really, we're on the hook for the bonds, the hospital, so every individual sitting in this room is on the hook for $4,000. Don't know if you know that. But if the hospital failed, then guess what? We have to pay for those bonds, and every citizen of the county owes $4,000 to that bond right now. So anyway, long story short, I'm not against the subsidy to keep the hospital where it's at.
It's not
I don't want to
subsidizing-
increase it if we don't have to.
It's not subsidizing the hospital, Greg. That's not what it's doing.
Well,
It is
the ambulance service.
paying for services rendered
Yes,
by the hospital. That's what it is.
yeah, okay.
And I get where you're coming from, Greg, because I think at the end, say next year when we do the budget, the hospital would realize that they won't have to put the 35 in. We're taking care of that, so
Right.
that subsidy would shrink by 35,000.
And if you look at the money that we're giving for that service, it grows and grows and grows every year. So that's the reason why I don't want to take another jump if we don't have to. If that 35.
But we are reducing this, I mean, if you two approve it,
Yeah.
then you're reducing the amount going in the line item for,
We're just moving it, we're not reducing it, but I don't want to increase it, is my point. So yeah, we'll see the documentation, and then we'll know one way or the other, so.
Okay.
So
Easy
somebody
peasy.
making a motion to table it, or?
Table.
Greg
Yep.
wants to table it.
So are you pursuing that, Greg?
Yeah, I'll ask.
Okay.
Steve?
So this will come back to you in your March meeting. Is that correct?
Yep.
I have met with Connie Berger. Delaying this is going to delay the overall payments going to Tell City. We're already 2 months behind. We're unable to pay without this transfer. We're unable to pay without these agreements with Cannleton and Troy. Connie and I have been working. We've been working with Pam. This is going to delay that process quite a bit. I would highly recommend that you go ahead and approve this so that it can go to the county council so that we can get the invoices processed so that Tell City can get their money. We're 2 months behind right now.
I'll change my motion then, okay, just to make sure that we don't hurt Tell City and the dispatch and everything else.
We need to
That's
move
really wrong,
forward.
Okay, I'll change my motion to be that I motion to approve upon receipt of documentation. Is that fair enough? That way, as long as it's in the documentation, it's approved. If it's not in the documentation, it comes back to us. Does that make sense?
Right. Without this, what it's going to do, as Connie suggested, Tell City can no longer do agreements with Cannleton, the ambulance service, and Troy with the new agreement the way it's written. That needs to come from the county. The county will process the invoice from Tell City and send one large payment to Tell City each month for dispatch services.
From all the different places.
The other route we can do, the county commissioners can sign an agreement with Perry County Memorial Hospital for $35,000. They will pass the money up, the hospital will pass it down, and they will have to sign an agreement with the hospital. Why do all that? Let's make it simple. Transfer the money, go ahead and utilize that money into a dispatch budget. It's the same as going up and coming down. You're eliminating one process. You're simplifying the process.
I'm not opposed to it, just want to see the documentation. And so my motion stands to approve as long as the documentation shows that have been paying in the past.
This makes it cleaner and easier for Tell City. I mean, seriously. That's
I have no
part of the
problem with
agreement.
doing it, I just want to see the documentation.
Okay, motion to approve it.
Okay, is there any way, I think we've got a council meeting next
Next
week?
Thursday.
I'll find out this week.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, then the council could,
I was actually getting ready to ask that.
I'll
If you'll be able to
have
get
it
the
done
answer
before the end
quick.
of the week.
okay.
Because we'll do the transfer like next Wednesday.
I
so.
think Shirley still works up there, I'm gonna walk up there and say, hey, show me where it's at, and she'll show me when it'll be done.
I think you
Okay.
gave me one. but-
Sign the improvement. I'm sorry,
I'll
I have
second
a
that.
second copy.
Okay, motion made and second. Vote by roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
And I abstain. 2-0, 1 abstention.
The transfer needs signed in by those. that-
It would be signed by the vice president, since I abstained.
Greg
Yeah.
and they both then need to sign the transfer, and then the other is the Peter Board.
We didn't pass that one.
The Peter Board, but you did. You did a
No.
5-member.
I thought that one was 3-member.
It's 3 or 5-member.
Oh, okay. I thought this one was just, well, I don't know that we took the, okay.
Hey, Graham, you sound department head.
You and Greg both.
Go, somebody sign right underneath that, be fine.
All right.
So. That's been approved on table.
Okay, the question I had, might be, I should know this answer, but on this tax assessment, if I didn't vote for it, did I sign it? I didn't vote for the 5-member board, I didn't think so.
Nope, you won't sign it.
Okay.
Nope. It's hard to remember what you guys done just 15 minutes ago.
I think we just need to keep pushing them down. The point's on our mind, so.
Yep.
All right.
I think that's all the signing I have.
Is it time for public comment? I have a
We're just ready to move to that. Miscellaneous first? Okay, yes.
Yeah, I have a question also up here. On your PETA BOA picks, you said that all three are Republicans. Did they claim that on their documentation? Because I know one is a registered Democrat, so I was just checking.
They did, didn't they, Teresa?
I don't think, I mean, they were asked to provide it.
Because you said that all three were
Not
Republicans.
everybody did. I was under the assumption that Ms. Bryant, Esri Bryant, and Ms. Noble were Republicans. And
Courtney did clarify.
Courtney.
Okay, so, but you guys said that all three were Republicans, and I
Guys did
don't...
not.
Well, it was stated during this meeting, all three were Republicans, and the other two picks had to be Democrats, and I think that's incorrect, so,
Okay,
Missy Noble
we'll
was
check.
Democrat for sure.
okay.
We'll check that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I thought for sure she was.
Well,
But
you want to get clarification, but I've known Missy.
does it really matter? Because I
I've
don't think
known
that's
Missy
a requirement, is
Republican forever.
it? Is it a requirement?
No, we just can't have more than 3.
So the council, even if one of them is a Democrat, the council can still do 2
That's right.
Democrats if they want, because it's still 3 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to make it defined, make sure for sure.
Right.
I
And
thought,
neither one of them,
You may reach out to Kim and Missy and,
yeah, clarified.
Yeah.
And I may be a mistake too. I mean,
Huh?
I may be a mistake too with that one, but I thought she was, so. It'd be clarified, just clarify with her. It'd be easy to
To
do. Missy, right?
Missy.
is she the one in question? Or is
That's the only one that I had
I would
questions.
check with any of them that don't have it on their list,
Yeah,
because it was
yeah, and I
stated
did
at
it.
this meeting
Yeah.
that they were all three Republicans, and there could not be another Republican.
I was
By
under
the
the impression
council.
that they're all 3
Well, I
Republicans.
think we need to know the facts before we move forward.
Yeah.
a lot of these came
It's easy to
in
verify.
late,
Correct.
and I'm just, yeah.
It's easy to verify.
I'll check. Yeah, because they don't have it in their letters.
But that will only affect the councils. All right, anything else? Next meeting? Oh, go ahead. All right.
I'm going to jump on one thing just before I move to what I wanted to talk about, and it's for my clarification, totally. The interlocal agreement. I haven't got my hands on a copy. I would love that. But just from the last meeting, the council meeting, and listening today, is it a committee or a board being
Committee.
appointed?
Committee,
Advisory committee.
advisory committee.
It is, so they have no power?
No.
Okay. That was.
They can suggest things.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I get the difference. I just, that is something, I've heard it said both ways.
Yeah.
Just clarification.
Right.
In the agreement is advisory committee, correct, Roger?
Yeah, yes.
And Derek?
Okay, that's all I wanted. Like I said, I haven't seen the agreement. What I'm here, want to talk about is, we're going to go back to the December 2nd. I had asked, and I'm going to read my email that I sent on December 13th, or, I'm sorry, December 13th. I sent to Teresa that I am requesting all public records on the 12/2/2021 meeting in the Commissioners' Room at the Perry County Courthouse where all 3 commissioners were present. The specific records request is for audio or written transcription of the no ink demonstration by Steve Shamu of Microvote. All public records leading up to, during, and actions taken following the Commissioners, County Administrator, County Clerk's Office, Perry County Election Board, and the no ink representative, Steve Shamu. I have requested that. That request stands there. I want those records. I did get back a reply that it had not been, the agenda had not been approved yet.
The minutes?
The minutes, yes. I'm sorry, yes, the minutes, which were,
I don't know
The previous meeting.
They were just done at the last
Yes,
meeting.
yes, and I do have those.
Yeah, they were just
Um,
done.
So, and that which leads me to some questions. No live streaming was done and no audio recording, and Pam, were you here for that?
For
The Steve Shamu?
That 4 o'clock
No,
demonstration.
and I had made that known that I could not make it that evening. I had other
Right,
obligation I had to
okay,
do.
so who took the minutes for that?
All I was just given some little information, and I just, because it was just a demonstration, so we did not.
But all three commissioners were there, so that became a public meeting.
And it was advertised as such.
Right,
Yeah.
so where are the minutes? Where is a recording of that meeting?
Minutes basically is just a general statement that there was they met for a demonstration, right, Pam? Is that what the minute, I think that's what the minute stated.
It was a minor
Right.
paragraph.
There was no motions.
It was a
there no
minute
action.
paragraph, I get that.
It was just a meeting.
Okay, and in that statement, Greg Jarbo and Stanley Goffman had several questions that got answered. Is that true?
They got answered, but I don't know if they got answered correctly. But there's two different statements there, right?
Right.
Because I got answers, but then when we actually went back to the law, they weren't necessarily answered correctly.
Correct. And was there, when the vote was taken, was there, like you just did earlier, I vote yes if? Was there an if or a but added to that? If it does not need to be linked to the internet, I vote yes. But we need to find that out.
Yeah, it was in the minutes that way, written that way.
Right. Were
I made
you
sure it was
answered? My question is, were you answered that?
Answered that day or when?
No,
As of
after.
now?
Is it approved?
As of now, what I was told is that it is required to be on the internet, is what I've been told.
Yeah, I got that phone call too, after there were questions asked
Yep.
from Mr. Shamu himself.
Yep.
I am so aggravated with this, just how it all went down. Steve, we were told we would have someone here from the state. So that was, my interpretation of that is the state's secretary office who is requiring these, or from the state election office. Do we know who Steve Shamu was?
He actually was a vendor.
He was a salesman. His last comment of that night publicly, I hope I didn't sound like a salesman. Exactly what he was. So we got nothing from the state, nothing. And yet we voted to do something, and now I'm being told it's out of you guys' hands. Is that correct?
As far as I know, the election board always has, if you look at the election board, it's not in our hands, period, for them. What happens is they basically are the ones that decide that process.
Correct.
So we don't
Then what
have-
did you vote on?
We voted on whether to approve the grant or not.
Approve the contract, if the election board decided to go that route, we approved the contract that this is how it would be done if they approved the process.
Money-wise.
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 But money, period, and
Yeah.
maintenance. So after that, it's totally out of your hands,
Right.
right? Okay. Because you clearly stated that night that we can shelve these. There's nothing stating because we approved this grant that we have to use these.
That's right.
Just
The
can't-
election board could shove them and not use them.
But the election board can't. But how can a commissioner sit here and say, we can shelve them when it was out of your hands? Once you did that approval,
Just to make it clear, I meant that the election board could shelf them.
but that ain't the way you said it, and that's not the
Well,
way
I
it was
meant
interpreted.
We meant it as the county.
Right, as a county, yeah.
Okay, and then go on to the minutes, which I think the record needs to clearly state that there were no minutes or video, audio taken of that meeting where the three commissioners were present. I think it needs to clearly state this. This little statement, I got one question mainly, is a sentence in that. I think they left with answers, which is great. I want to know who I is. Who wrote these? Who is I?
I wrote them, but I mean, you guys approved them.
But is that, and then this is not you, Pam, at all, you know, but
I'd have to go
is
back.
that not interjecting you into this?
Because my minutes, I actually put more in my minutes than what I really need to.
Right,
And I
and-
did not, and I have to admit, I hated that part too, because I was not here, and I did not like not having to write a good paragraph, because.
So who wrote it?
My minutes
I
are
know,
very lengthy.
they are very thorough.
Yeah.
That's what shocked me
Yeah.
about this, because,
But I was not at that meeting, and I already had let it known that I couldn't be at that meeting.
so I'm
That
asking
might be
for,
misquoted.
it is, and that the answers had several questions that got answered. That's another statement that was put in there that is interjecting you into the process.
And
That
I
was
just
not
had
here.
talked to somebody saying that they had, they asked questions, and Mr. Shamu had talked to them, and I was taken with that.
So did anybody else know that he was not anything more than a salesman?
I didn't know until after the commissioners' meeting when I actually called him to see if he'd followed up on whether the law was supposed to be. And when I called him, that's when I realized that he was actually a vendor.
So he's not from the state?
No. No, he is from
He's from
Micro
Mobile, he's a
Boats.
vendor.
I mean, I knew it because, I didn't know that everybody else didn't.
But it's the way it was stated to the public, that someone from the state would be here.
And in fact, I'm not questioning it, I just remember that.
Do you know if the state contracted this vendor? If they contracted the vendor to do this for the counties, that-
But they contracted for the equipment.
Right.
This guy has no knowledge
I don't
of
know.
law. He is a vendor selling like he sold us the voting machines. That's all he is he's a vendor. And we went through that, I don't know how long it lasted, a couple hours.
I think you were even under the impression that he was from the state until the end of the meeting, right?
Yes, well,
We
until
talked-
he made the comment.
Right.
I hope I didn't sound like a salesman,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there thinking, you did sound like a salesman.
Yeah.
And then it didn't take much, I stood here and talked to him for probably 20 minutes to half hour after the meeting, and got to the bottom of it. And he was a salesman. So yes, I have major problems with this, the way this is worded, the way it was handled. I think, and I sent other emails to the lawyer, I don't think, I think it's all, should be disqualified, period. That's just my feelings, because it wasn't done correctly.
Did you send those to Chris? You said the lawyer? Okay.
Yes, he
No,
was
I'll check
included
that
on the
later.
email that I sent,
Okay.
when I sent the initial. But my request still stands. I want all the information. I'm making it publicly, but I've also put it in writing. So I would like all that information in writing.
Anything exists that you are entitled to, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
There, Chief has a,
Yes, sir.
he'll keep it brief.
Yeah, thank you. We wanted to get some clarification on something. I want to go through the proper procedure to get this clarification. Back to the, on the interlocal agreement, there's a section about the roles and responsibilities, actually it's called powers and responsibility of this advisory committee. So I know Ms. Taylor just mentioned about whether or not they have any powers. I just want to make sure that, I understand what the proper procedure is. So, because recently there was a little bit of confusion that kind of circled back to me. So, on the interlocal agreement, which I have in front of me, it says that, as it talks about the powers and duties of the advisory committee, it says for B, section B, it says to review bids and contracts for equipment purchase and maintenance and for provision of other necessary services and provide recommendations to the city or county council. What brought this up was there's already been some purchases that were taken to the county council. Just recently, it was the Tango, and Steve was nice enough to reach out to me directly on that, and ask my opinion on it, which I do appreciate that. But, like I shared with Steve at the time was I said that, I understand that that's what this committee's for. That was what we agreed on. And In fact, the city of Tell City, at my understanding, had already appointed 2 people to represent that board. I know that you guys haven't made your appointments yet at that point, I understand that. But my suggestion to Steve would be that, you know, while I appreciated him reaching out to me, I knew that Mayor Kell had designated Micah Jackson and Assistant Chief Smith. I suggested that he should speak to them, you know, being on that committee. But then the council meeting happened, and then there was a vote that there would be a purchase. And when that discussion came up, one of the council members had asked, well, does this have anything to do with the committee? I think Steve's response was that, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that or whatever. I don't want to quote him exactly, but it was that it was not, there was no board or something. That board's now the council. I just want to make sure, am I correct in understanding that purchases that has to do with 911 and from the 911 fund, that committee does have the power. That's one of the responsibilities of him, is to meet and weigh in on those decisions before it goes to the council.
To make recommendations, yeah. I mean, maybe the timing was, but it's still up to the council on the 911 funds. And, you know, this is new.
Sure.
And so.
But I think it was just the way that it was explained at that meeting when they had said, oh, well, you know, that board no longer exists or something. I can't remember the wording.
It's not a 911 board. It is an advisory committee for Psap.
Sure.
And recommendations can come from that, yes.
Okay. I think to get to the point.
Can I make 2 comments?
Sure.
Just real quick, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I think going back to intent again, it's one of those things where you're reading the intent of this. I think the intent of this is that things like that would go through this board. And my opinion is, now that we've got a majority for sure, right? We've got our board formed. I think those kind of things need to go through them before it goes to any one of the councils, whether that's city or county. That's my opinion. That's the way I interpret this. I hope that's the way everybody interprets this. And then the second comment is that I know you're telling us this, and I know why, and I appreciate that, because it's the conversation that we needed to have. I think you also need to have that same conversation with the council at the next council meeting too, so that they understand that too. Because it is new, and I'm not poking at the council at all. I'm just saying that they need to be informed as well, and so that would be an opportune time for you to do that in public comments at the council meeting too. Yeah. But my interpretation of this is those kinds of things would go before this advisory committee.
Yeah, I think the reason why I felt inclined to bring it up here was because there was talk about interpretation and things, and I want to make sure that we have an understanding of what the expectations are, since you guys, you know, agreed, you know, signed off on this agreement and things. So, I mean.
Yeah, but it's going to take a little bit to
sure.
iron out the wrinkles.
And I understand that, and, you know, that's not to say that there would have been any change or that vote or request would have changed. It's just I want to make sure that we all, that there is, you know, within the powers and responsibilities of that committee.
To make recommendations,
yeah.
But it doesn't have to go through them first. But we want to honor the recommendations.
You mean
it doesn't have to go through the committee first. It doesn't say that. It says that the way, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm just.
It says that the advisory committee, let me get back to it, okay. To review bids and contracts for equipment, purchase and maintenance, and for provision of other necessary services, and provide recommendations to the city or county council. So, to me, that, you know, if there's an expense that is needed for the 911 system, that the committee would review together collectively and then make a recommendation with the county council having the final say. And that doesn't mean that they have to necessarily honor that recommendation, but it's a collective assessment of that expense. That's, you know, I think that we all worked very hard, and it was testy at times, to say the least. And our concern is that, you know, we put so much into this, and we're trying to make it better, that, you know, the first expense of the year was sidestepped from that.
Yeah. Well, I could say from this point forward, now that the committee is established, then by all means, it makes sense to me. Yes, Steve?
I was going to say, you're talking about bids and contracts for purchases, so I don't know, where does that fall in?
You're looking at two different things. What is meant to be in the contract was expenses the dispatch had requested. And there are
For
other,
dispatch
for
services.
dispatch services, that is correct. That is what was supposed to be going to the committee. There are other expenses that are paid from 911 that is not associated with dispatch. Those expenses would not be going to the committee. There's a misinterpretation of that at that point. That is what I was discussing with the county council. This was not a request from Central Dispatch. The Tango was not. I did speak to Chief Lou Allen, Chief Hall. I spoke to everyone, all the chiefs that was involved that uses the program, and they did give me their blessing that they did encourage us to get those expenses paid. They want to continue to keep the Tango program. But again, that was not a request as a dispatch expense.
Yeah, I see that your interpretation is that this committee reviews contracts that has to do with the expense of dispatch is what the county is, and the city is paying for.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I was thinking that we all agreed that it's one unit. 911 is one unit, and that these statewide funds and things like that, that was the reason why we revisited this, was that there would be a committee that oversaw that,
Or makes recommendations.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So we made that very clear in here, and so, I wasn't aware that we were going to make designations within that statewide 911 funds, that this is going to be for this, it's going to be for that. It's my understanding that we all agreed that 911 is basically the whole general thing, the whole general component, and that we would be having this advisory committee, because just like you spoke a while ago when you appointed your members, you wanted not just dispatchers, you wanted people from different capacities. So, and I think is an understandable move. But, so it's not, we're looking at it as a big unit here, a 911 system, so.
Yeah, I think that's stated in that second whereas of the contract, and that's why I think it's important is, and therefore agree that the primary Psap site will be located on 707 Mozart Street, which is dispatch, and the backup P site will be located at 32 14th Street, Tell City, which I argued whether we could have a backup Psap, but anyway, that, to me, that means that any funds that you're using out of the 911 fund should go through this committee, and at least be advised to that committee. Doesn't mean that the council can't go, we don't agree with your recommendation and we're going to go ahead and do this. That's totally plausible and can happen. But I think it all goes through them. And to me, that just keeps harmony between everybody involved is what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Now, as far as this one that happened here recently, I regret how that went down. I mean, I don't have any control over how that went down, but I regret how that went down. But I think it was just because it's new. I really do. I don't think there was any harm intent there, and I think Psap, if you go back to the Psap Advisory Committee, you go, hey, you all right with Tango Tango? I think they're going to say they're okay with Tango Tango. I really do. I mean, we got dispatchers here that use probably Tango Tango all the time, so to get calls back and forth through the radios. So if that's the case, I think we move forward, but I think you have to understand that the intent is for all that money to basically be advised to that committee. That's my understanding of reading this.
Seems like that would be best
Just let
practice.
that one go, right, because whatever happened, but moving forward, why can't all this go through that committee? And that's just gonna keep harmony among the groups, that's what's gonna happen, so. And that's a big part of why we did this, is to create that harmony and understanding, so.
Do you agree Tango was a good thing for your department?
Yes,
Countywide?
Steve did call me. Like he said, he and I talked, and I told him, I said, me personally, I said, I have found that to be beneficial, and I know several other people in our department. And my position was, and it doesn't change, was that, I felt like that, it was something that should go through the board, the committee.
Yeah.
But, in all fairness, that committee wasn't seated yet, but I did share with him that the mayor had identified his 2 members, so.
And more than likely, it would have, committee would have passed it 100% and no harm done.
Yes, I think the reason, my point, Randy, is that, you know, I think that at the end of that, you know, in that council meeting when Steve made that proposal, I can't remember which one it was, but one of the council members had asked, well, isn't this something that would go through the committee? And Steve's...
Randy asked that.
Okay, and Steve's response was that, you know, just like he just shared, that it had nothing to do with dispatch. And I'm confused about that, and I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Just like Greg said, it's our understanding that 911 funds is something that we all should have some say in, and, you know, that was the part of the reason why this committee was formed, you know, just, I mean, it would be best practice, right? I mean, so, I don't know why it wouldn't be something that we can just pass through, because it is something that we're all invested in.
Well, I don't think it was intentional on Steve's part either.
No,
to
I'm
try to
not
do
saying that
something
either,
wrong. I
no.
don't, not, farthest thing from my mind
Yeah.
is that.
I see both.
I think that's Steve's interpretation of it. I think that was the way he understood the agreement, and I understood it differently. So maybe it's just, you know, I want to, that's why I wanted to come forward here to get that clarification.
Now, it doesn't have to have the approval, but it's not a bad idea. How about that?
I think the protocol is it goes to that advisory committee regardless, and then it goes to the council, and the council's their own entity.
Because
they're the ones going to decide one way or the other. I mean, so if you go to if you go to the advisory committee, and you say, hey, I need 25 grand for X, Y, Z, and the advisory committee says no, right? We don't want to do that. You can still take that to the council, and the council can override the advisory committee. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, because it's not in the power of the advisory committee to say no. It's to advise. It's an advisory committee. But this is all in the hands of the council at this point, you know, in the sense of that. But I hope that they interpret it the same way that I interpret it. But that's, and I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to both physical bodies, the Tell City and the county council.
Yeah, and absolutely, you know, and I think that the idea is when it did go to the council for final say, that there was a balanced approach, and it was, you know, it involved different entities, and you know, when you know that there's some checks and balances in place that everybody's going to kind of, and that's the whole point of doing this, you know. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. You're exactly right. I feel like the county council, they control those expenditures, and they have the final say.
They control it 100%.
Sure.
Now, if the council says, you know, I'm gonna go back in time, Steve comes and asks for that thing. It is, the council can say, yep, we agree, you know, that we'll make that expenditure. Or the council can say, well, what's the advisory committee say?
Sure.
And they can take that consideration. So the harmony thing that Greg mentioned, I think is important.
Yeah.
And I think we're heading the right direction with that. Do you agree with that?
Yep.
And so,
I
I mean,
think we all
the
just-
statement that it is 911 funds are 100% controlled by the council is true. But it's not a bad thing for the council to say, well, I'd like to hear what the advisory committee says.
Yeah.
Sure.
You disagree with that, Steve?
Yeah, I think that was the
Yeah,
intended purpose.
If I was the council, I'd ask that every time.
Moving moving forward from this, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe, and if there's a policy change that involves the commissioners, I could see that also. No, we don't have to, but you know what, I wouldn't mind hearing what the advisory committee has to say. I mean, that's.
I got a question. Anything can happen. What if emergency gets set, something happens to the 911 system right now? Do we have time to go through the advisory committee and the council and everything, or do you have some type of backup? Say if a repeater goes down, bam, we need it up today. I mean, what happens then?
I think that falls under the same thing, the other budgetary item that would happen. If you had something happen in the police department right now where 3 cars died and you knew you couldn't do anything, then you
got an intent?
You have an intent to go on with that.
But that would fall under the reason why you don't want to make it, okay, we have to get this committee together before anything can happen. If it's something that,
Yeah, I mean, I think that,
That's what we agreed on. We agreed to email. If we couldn't meet, something happened, emergency, we would email the committee, reach out to you
Right.
guys.
There is no OEL, right?
Because we can't let 911 go down one
No, we
minute.
can't wait.
yeah, we're kind of in the business of improvising, and that's what we have to do sometimes in a situation like that, you know. Steve has been he's very reachable, and we can work through those things, so.
That's where we're at. I mean, and the harmony of it, I mean, I agree, the open discussions, you know, and, but I don't want to tie hands.
Yeah. I think personally, Tom, you know, where I'm at with this is that, you know, we all may have shed some years off our life and stress last year going through all this stuff. It was very
I remember sitting
challenging.
in front of the door till we came
Yeah,
to an agreement.
and I mean, you were right there with us, and, you know, it was one of those things that I hope no one ever has to go through again for anybody involved, because it was just, it had gotten that, in that situation, so.
Everybody involved is so passionate.
But I think we all showed our leadership by working through it on both sides, and we made some tremendous gains, and here we are now, we have this in place, and I just want to make sure that we all have an understanding that, you know, we can't just interpret it how we want and work around it or through it how we want. You know, we have to be on the same page with this, you know.
Right.
That's
But
the
when
only
we
way it's
talk
going to
about
work.
interpretation, the point that Roger made about dispatchers, he makes a point.
Yes.
You know, I didn't sit there and say, no, you're wrong, Roger, no,
Right,
that's not
yeah.
what. And, but, you know, in having Micah represent dispatch is, no, I don't think that's a bad thing.
That's a great
You
thing.
know what I mean? This, well, everybody that's involved and been involved in it as many years as you, me, Steve, Roger, Micah, you know, we've been involved a lot of years.
Yes.
And this is one of the steps that probably needed to be taken years ago.
Yes.
But there was a assumption, which, you know what happens with assuming, and that wasn't, I think we made strides.
Yeah.
Now, is it perfect from the get-go? Absolutely not. But we'll have to interpret and take, the key to this is everybody has a respect for the other side.
Sure.
Because you come to the table with something different than Roger, than Steve,
Trust.
than me,
Trust is the
and
big
trust.
thing.
I
If you don't trust each other, it's dead.
I absolutely agree with that, and I think that we have to, you know, we need to just trust that people are gonna go through the right protocols, the right procedures.
right thing.
And, you know, because that's why we all come together and work through these things, so, I'm sure with a little bit of work and just making sure that we hammer down those key things, and,
And this advisory committee is what it is, advise on whatever. It's not a governing body, but, you know, and I'm gonna be facetious here, this committee may say, well, what color are we gonna paint the walls next time? Well, if they want to discuss it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's the decision of the mayor.
yeah.
Or the police department, whoever, you know, that this advisory committee, well, they don't have the right to say what color we paint the walls,
But I think that
but they can.
with this pot of money, you know, I think that when decisions are made about those expenses, those decisions are better made when there is a variety of people that are coming together, that people that are affected by it, you know, people that are invested and affected by it, when they come together and share a recommendation, that is going to get better results. People are going to get behind those decisions a lot
Their
better.
opinion should be
Yeah, that's,
respected.
yeah. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Darren.
I gotta add, I'm sorry. With what he was just coming with, just so the record shows, I want two things. One, that you all know I am totally against the meeting that went down on 12/2, and that the result of it, I am against. I think it needs revisited. Two, the county council did question. I just listened to that meeting again last night. They did question if this was not supposed to go before this committee.
Right.
And they were told that that committee no longer exists. It's your call. It's clearly stated in the minutes, or in the video. So I just want that reflected, that that is what was said.
Okay, what that meant was that there was a talk of a 911 board that controls all the 911 funds, and that was not in the agreement. It is an advisory committee for dispatch.
Right,
That's what
but
that
it was
meant.
just
And the
stated that that has to
911
go
funds-
before them.
The 911 funds are the total, under the total control of the county council. That was the answer to that.
So
And that's-
what you're saying is, and what I'm hearing, is that this commission was put in place for looks? I mean,
Advisory.
right. But they
It's not
weren't,
just looks.
well, it is, because you're sweeping this under the rug and said, well, we know now for next time, instead of hitting what happened last time. What clearly happened last time, and you can go back and watch the video, the council clearly was at a loss of why this was brought before them. And they asked, wasn't this to come before board committee? Like I said, I've heard it said different ways, but they clearly asked. And they were told that that no longer existed, interpretation or not.
The question was, and we listened, isn't there a 911 board? And that is, there is
That's why
no
I
911
asked.
board. Right.
That's why I asked, because the board is thrown out when it's convenient and commission. That's why I asked, what is
The agreement is
it?
committee. That's the advisory committee. That is the agreement.
And my comment of that this one is no harm, no foul is not in the sense that I want to sweep it under the rug. What I want to say is that I don't want to destroy what we tried to fix, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to do that over just this, because I truly believe if we go back to the Psap committee now, ask them, and I bet you they say tango's fine, go ask the council for it. If they don't, well then, okay, well, maybe we got something to do. But to me, the council still makes that decision. My process is, I just want to move forward from that. Yes, is a mistake made? Okay, yes, maybe, no, 6 dozen, half another. Let's let it go so we can move forward. And that's all I want to do, is move forward, because if we don't move forward, we're stagnant and we'll die, right? And I got head shakes back there from the officers too. So as long as we now know the intent and interpretation, I think we're solid. But I do think, go back to the council, clarify that, just make sure that they understand that, educate them, just so that they know, because it is new. It is new, so.
It is something that the committee will, I mean, there's lots of things that the committee can meet and advise on.
Yep.
And that's what the intent of the, yeah, Roger.
So your suggestion, what I'm hearing is that we approach the council at the next meeting and do exactly what Chief done to clarify
Yes.
things contained herein.
Do a small educational kind of debrief with them. That's what I would suggest doing, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, and Steve, you want to be involved in that too? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
right. They educate what it means. And the council can make decisions based on what information that they receive.
Yes, sir.
You know, I mean, they could have information on an expense that they approve or don't approve from anyone that they choose to get it from.
I would say the council would probably want to have as much information as possible, right? I mean,
That's up to them.
Yeah.
That's up to the council, yes.
Absolutely.
But
Right, absolutely.
The goal here with this committee is to control more than just policies, and that was stated in the video.
Yeah.
There's more than just policies, we do
For-
these as this committee.
4B and 4C clearly go into financials. There is no doubt whatsoever, 4B and 4C clearly go into financials, contract services, all that good stuff. So there's no doubt reading it, so. Which then has to be interpreted by the council on what they want to do, or how they want to proceed, so.
Right.
Is the committee fully formed now?
Committee is fully formed.
I mean, it would be,
Lee Hall,
I'm just
Troy,
thinking out loud here.
I don't
think it
know.
would be a good idea if the committee would meet first and have this discussion.
Absolutely.
It would
And then
be.
maybe come to terms with the appointing and the approving bodies or whatever.
Steve, do you know about Troy?
Might be a good idea for everybody to get together on the same page, rather than just one or two of you.
Right now, you've got 6 of the 7 for sure,
Might be it.
which is majority.
We're waiting on Troy, I believe. I reached out to Canada Mayor
Have you reached out to them?
and with Mr. Terry, I did. And I have not reached out to Troy to get their determination. recommendation or decision on who they chose.
Can you get with Steve and just somebody reach out?
I'd love to know.
Somebody reach out
Just to
to,
hear who they appointed.
They haven't had a meeting yet.
Okay.
It's supposed to be at their next meeting.
Okay.
as soon as that's made,
my
can
suggestion
you
is
pull the
meet
committee
first
together?
To have the discussion.
Yeah, we're coming up on the first, I mean, we need a meeting. We need that group gathered at some point, sooner than later.
Exactly.
And I highly recommend, once that group does gather, you discuss all this, come back and educate us again, okay? Because we learn every time, right? This is a growing, move forward, grow, make it happen, right? That's what we need to do, so.
Yeah, and this committee will evolve into what it
It's a-
evolves in.
Yep.
Yes.
I suggest we wait till the committee meets before we approach county council.
I think that's a good idea.
That was my suggestion,
I
is
second, I agree.
get the committee together to discuss what their interpretation is, or, so everybody's on the same page. That's just.
Right,
And
to
it's-
clarify that.
If they don't want to make an appointment, I mean, where do we go from here? And Troy doesn't want to.
You have a majority. You have a majority. Move forward.
Right, you do. Okay.
I just want to clarify, Greg, you said that this committee is not subject to open door laws. I disagree with that because I
No.
talked to the public access counselor, and he said that if governing bodies appoint to advisory committees, they absolutely are, because I asked about ARP committee. And
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that. I did not realize that.
Yes.
With no elected officials on there, I didn't
he
realize
said
that was the
it-
case.
It doesn't matter if it's a board or a committee, if it is appointed by elected officials of governing bodies, then it is subject to open door laws. So
There we go. Good clarification, thank you.
you can check it.
Just
You can-
another,
No, I
another thing you gotta worry
appreciate it.
about.
Okay. My mistake, I withdraw.
It's okay, I just wanted to.
Thank you for clarifying. On the ARP, the reason why I thought it was open doors because of me and Tom, so that's.
That was my impression too, that there was two commissioners in it.
So I appreciate that.
Okay, anything else? Next meeting.
Next meeting is Monday, March 7th, 6 PM, here at the
I
courthouse.
think I'm out of town, but I don't think there's much on the agenda that night, so. I've got another meeting I'm missing that night also, so. Just go ahead and schedule it. You should have a quorum.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't even know what's on the agenda or what's coming up.
Well, if something changes, you can advise me in ahead of time to post the
Yeah,
proper notice.
proper notice, yeah. Okay.